When you ask someone what Russian food is, they'll most likely answer beef stroganoff, chicken Kiev, and borscht, none of which are actually Russian. Borscht originated in Ukraine, but there are versions everywhere from Poland to Azerbaijan. What I'm showing you here is the full classic Russian restaurant version. That is, not the type you would get in a cheap Russian cafeteria or an ordinary restaurant, or the type that a Russian housewife might make. This is the full elaborate classic that you would be served only in a fine dining restaurant in Russia.
In a cast iron pan, I'm taking, with no real oil down, just a little bit of gloss in the pan, an onion, press it down, and I'm just going to let it sit here until it blackens. This is what you want to see. You want to see it actually burnt on the surface. This is part of the flavor. Don't worry about this because these won't actually be in the final soup. They're just contributing flavor for the stock. This is the type of beef that I'm using. It has some fat on it. We're going to skim this fat off later, but it's a good quality meat. It's not like garbage meat. But there's quite a bit of fat, but that's okay because we're going to skim the fat, like I said. Okay, into a pot with 2 liters of water, I put the meat. Now I'm putting these charred carrots and onions in there. And a couple of bay leaves. Now I'm going to bring this up to a simmer, let it start poaching that meat. Now alternatively, you can use a pressure cooker. This will save you a lot of time and will actually give you a better result in this case. Traditionally you would just boil it until it's tender, but since I have a pressure cooker, let's use it. And when the time's up, you release the pressure. Get these vegetables out of here. And then these vegetables are simply discarded. We're going to strain this off and separate the fat. After you remove the meat and it's cooled, you have to go through it, look for any excessively fatty pieces or any pieces of gristle, and just get rid of those. It's going to take you a few minutes to go through it, but this will make the final soup much nicer. So just look through. You can see the pieces that are fatty and gristle. Just get rid of those. Toss them. This meat was pretty lean. As you can see, when I strain this broth into fat separating pitcher, there's really very little fat in this. So in this case, since there's so little fat, I'm probably going to use I'm going to use butter and oil instead, and I'm just going to drain this off and forget about this fat. If we had a lot of fat in here, we could actually use that to fry the vegetables, but there's just not enough volume. I have beets that were boiled the day before. As explained, these have to be passed through a grater. You want it to be authentic. You can't use a knife to cut these up. They need to actually be grated, and you'll have a little bit of waste because you can't get the last bit of beet through. Until you have this 300 grams of grated beets. At the front of the stove, we have 2 pans that are being heated up. One's a skillet, the other one's a stock pot. They both have 1 tablespoon of olive oil and 1 tablespoon of butter in them. Sunflower oil would really be more traditional. I just like olive oil, but use whatever you like. At the back of the stove, I have the beef stock that was cooked with a singed carrot and the blackened onion. And I'm bringing this back up to temperature along with the meat that's been picked through. Get rid of all the fat and gristle off of that. I'm going to begin heating this again. Now, when the butter melts and this begins to come to temperature, we're going to cook the beets in here. And we're not looking to brown them. We just want to cook them gently in the butter and the oil. Sweat them. This is a step that really seems quite strange because usually you don't cook beets like this. You don't boil them and then sweat them. That's what makes this recipe work. It's what makes borscht really. And now in the other pan, I'm going to add that celery, the carrot, and the bell pepper. And the same thing here. We're going to begin sweating these vegetables off. for a good few minutes. And you have to be patient with this. It's one of those peasant dishes. You know, it's, peasants had a lot of time on their hands. They took care with ingredients. That's what this is all about. After 12 minutes of sauteing on a medium heat, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of salt to the beets. We have 120 grams of pureed tomatoes or passata. I'm going to add about half of that to the beets, along with about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more, of wine vinegar. And we're going to continue cooking these beets on the same medium heat we've been cooking them. And now, at the same time, we turn our attention to the other vegetables that we cooked. These have also been softening or sweating for the same 12 minutes. Now I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt to them, the rest of the pureed tomatoes, and stir around. Same heat, medium. We're going to continue sweating these too. Reduce that tomatoes down a little bit with the vegetables. You can use all sorts of meat in this, in actuality, including pork ribs, which are very common. I've used beef here in the beginning. I'm going to be adding this Russian sausage. This is a very good quality Russian sausage. You can use any smoked sausage you want. Don't use a salami or something that's intensely Italian. Stick with something that's more neutral in flavor. German sausage, or preferably Russian. Smoked is good. It's been 8 minutes now. Now I'm adding the sausage. I removed the casing from it and diced it up. That's all I did. We're going to brown this just a little bit. The beets are continuing to cook. This is going to cook for just a few more minutes. Get some color on the sausage. And after about 4 more minutes, we're going to deglaze this pan with a little bit of beef stock. It's still at the back of the stove with the meat simmering in it. Scrape the bottom down, and now I'm going to turn the heat off of this. This is going to get added to the soup here in just a minute. And we're also going to turn the heat off of the beets that have been cooking with the tomato puree. And you can see what these look like. They're quite dried out now. Concentrated. That's what we wanted, to concentrate all these flavors. So now this is all ready. Now we're ready to begin combining things. I have a large pot here, a stock pot. I'm going to add meat and the beef broth to that, along with those beets. Vegetables, pan that I just deglazed here, carrots and the bell pepper and the celery. Make sure you get everything in there. Also, this is the time to add all of the finely diced and shredded cabbage. Just cut this up with a knife. I'm also going to add another liter of water at this point. We'll have to adjust the exact amount of water as this cooks to get the consistency that you want. Begin heating this. Now I'm going to dice a little potato to go into this while this is starting to heat. And I'm bringing this up to a simmer before I add the potatoes and the garlic. Now, when it comes to a simmer, you can adjust the salt level a little bit at this point. If you want to go for something slightly not traditional, but very flavorful, and now very common in Russia because they sell these everywhere, instead of salt, you add one of these little gel packs of Knorr beef stock to it. This will concentrate the flavor. Certainly it's what we would do in a restaurant. But regardless of which one you do, now that it's at a simmer, we're going to add the potatoes and this crushed garlic to it. Give it a stir, and begin counting the time. Now we're going to count 30 minutes before we go to the next stage. 30 minutes. After 30 minutes of simmering, I'm going to add the dill and the parsley, and however much black pepper you want to add. See the notes there. Stir it, and we continue simmering it for the very last segment of cooking. Let it simmer a little bit longer. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.